We all like to be in control, or at least to think we are in control. We all have things or places, or sometimes even other people, where we feel that we should be in charge, where we feel like this is part of our kingdom. I like Dallas Willard's definition of a kingdom. He says that your kingdom is the range of your effective will. Basically, our kingdom is where we are in charge, where what we say goes, where we have control, or at least think we do. Family life is a good example. If I think back to when our children were small, I seem to remember that we had some degree of control. However, I recently heard a friend of mine describe his frustration at trying to get his daughters ready to get themselves dressed and ready for school. And I was reminded that even when our children are small, any control we think we have is very limited. From an early age, children start trying to control what they see as their kingdoms. As John Ortberg points out, some of the first words they learn are no and mine. Those are our kingdom words, words that are to do with where I believe I'm in charge, where I think I'm in control. As our children grow, we may have the ultimate sanction of turning off the Wi-Fi or confiscating a mobile phone, but we aren't really in control. And when our children become adults, we realize that we have no control, and perhaps all we ever really had was a chance to influence them, hopefully for the better. Psychologists identify that one of the key causes for stress in our lives is when we feel that we should have control of events or the people around us, but we realize we don't. The reality is that the only person we can really control is ourselves, and even that can seem impossible sometimes. In the video on the right of this one on the website, Nadia talks about the need to have it all, the need not to disappoint anyone, effectively the need to be in control of ourselves and our situation. Yet the need to be in control can imprison us in anxiety, imprison us in the fear of losing control, imprison us with the fear of disappointing other people, or even the fear of disappointing ourselves. For some people, this need to control can become so dominant that they become a slave to it. That desire for control might show itself in a bullying or micromanaging boss, or in a controlling spouse, or in a manipulative friend, or an overprotective parent. And whenever they feel like they're losing control, then anxiety and internal tensions rise, and these feelings show themselves in anger and violence, or conversely in fear, or even physical illness. Now, those might be the extremes, but we can all feel a certain amount of anxiety when we're in situations where we feel we should be in control, but realize that we aren't. In a way, this takes us back to the cycle of grief that we talked about in week 2. To feel acceptable in our own eyes and the eyes of others, we need to achieve, and that means being in control. We might feel anxious or frustrated because we feel that we can't cope, but at the same time we need to be in control, or as Nadia says in the video to the right, that we have to keep the plate spinning and that we aren't good enough unless we can do it all. Yet, as she says, my faith tells me that I am already enough, that I am loved as I am, quite apart from anything I do or not do. Which takes us right back to the cycle of grace that we also explored in week 2. That desire to be in control, that feeling that we should be able to exert our will but we can't, affects our minds and our bodies and our relationships and disintegrates us from our souls again. In situations like that, it can help to remind ourselves that we don't need to be in control. When we understand the psychology that drives us to want to control, when we realize that it's our will trying to exert itself, then we can also exercise our will in choosing to let go of control, to let the plates drop. It can be hard to do that in the heat of the moment, but with practice, we can learn to give our anxiety and frustrations to God as they arise. You could say that it's the spiritual equivalent of counting to 10, but it is so much more effective than that. Counting to 10 is just waiting for our immediate reactions to subside. Giving our anxieties and frustrations to God can set us free. Now, we can't easily practice this in a live situation, but we can begin to recognize and change our responses to our emotions in our imaginations. Find a quiet space where you'll be undisturbed and picture a situation where you think you should be in control, but you aren't. A situation where you think your kingdom, that the range of your effective will is being challenged. As you imagine that situation, you'll likely feel anxiety and frustration growing and giving rise to anger and or fear. Don't fight these feelings, but acknowledge them and then surrender them and give them to God, or if you prefer, to a higher power. When we practice doing this sort of exercise, then over time we'll find it easier to do in the moment, and we find it easier to remain integrated as a whole person in those times where we feel we can't be in control. And that can give a huge boost to the capacity of our resilience tank. The dimensions of that resilience tank correspond well to the parts of the person in Dallas Willard's model. The soul with our spiritual resilience, relationships, obviously, with our relational resilience, the body with our physical resilience, and the mind with our mental and emotional resilience. They both belong there. But how does the will fit in to all this? Well, we'll look at that in one final video tomorrow. I hope you can join us.